Hello, my name is Carole Theobald, and I lead the Zonta Says NOW to Gender Equal Climate Action Working Group. The 16 days of activism against gender-based violence is coming up, so today we'll look at how climate change contributes to intimate partner violence, sexual violence, human trafficking and sexual exploitation, female genital mutilation, and child marriage. There have been many studies showing how gender-based violence increases in disasters around the world. Heat, drought, fires, floods, and storms can generate potential triggers for gender-based violence, such as unsafe or insecure housing, substance abuse, stress, trauma, grief and loss, relationship problems, unemployment and economic pressures, complex bureaucratic processes regarding grants, insurance, and rebuilding, reduced informal and formal support and services, as well as restricted movement and transport options, and changed community and different life courses. This report found that in disasters, there is enormous pressure on women from family members, friends, police, and even health professionals not to speak of men's violence. And the authors concluded that until there is effective action, the vicious circle of disaster followed by increased gender-based violence and strengthened patriarchal power will continue. So against that background, let's take a look at intimate partner violence. A number of studies have shown the links between extreme heat and rising domestic violence. A Yale University study tracked nearly 200,000 girls and women who lived in India, Pakistan, and Nepal. They found that when there was a 1 degree Celsius increase in the average annual temperature, there was a more than 6% rise in physical and sexual domestic violence. In Madrid, researchers found the risk of intimate partner femicide rose by 40% in a heat wave. And in Kenya, women who experienced severe weather events, including heat waves, were 60% more likely to report intimate partner violence. We read so many statistics, but what does this mean for women? This is Sunita's story, and she lives in India. She says, "When the May and June heat hit and it became impossible for my husband to work in the fields, we would lose our only source of income. He becomes angry because he feels helpless about not being able to feed the children. When the frustration builds up and the children are whining and fighting, he takes it out on me. He also beats up the children. He regrets hitting the children later, but the next day, when he still can't go out and earn, he does it again." After major bushfires in Australia, survivors talked about their experience with gender-based violence, and this comment was chilling. Emma said, "It's like he's died. It's like I'm a widow, but the corpse is still here to beat me up." So let's look at sexual violence. When women are displaced, they are at greater risk of violence, including sexual violence. While they sleep, wash, bathe, or dress in emergency shelters, tents, or camps, the risk of sexual violence is a tragic reality of their lives as migrants and refugees. There are reports of migrant women who have suffered sexual abuse while under the protection of the authorities, and who, when they report it, instead of being protected, have been imprisoned. In families where men have left home to seek a living elsewhere, women and children are left to fend for themselves, which makes them very vulnerable to violence and sexual exploitation. In the USA, following Hurricane Katrina, the rate of rape among women displaced to trailer parks rose 53.6 times the baseline rate in Mississippi for that year. Sometimes sex is used as currency. In Uganda, climate changes have increased crop failures, livestock loss, and food insecurity. Some vendors, farmers, or landowners insist on trading sex with women in exchange for food or rent. Often attempts by women to negotiate providing labour in exchange for food are rejected. In Lake Victoria in Kenya, men catch the fish and women sell it. Overfishing, agricultural runoff, and warming temperatures have led to fewer fish in the lake. Fishermen weren't catching enough to supply all the women fishmongers, so the fishermen started the Jaboya system. Give me sex and I'll make sure you get fish to sell. For many women, the survival of their family depends on getting fish to sell, so they felt they had to comply. The fishermen travel from village to village with many sexual partners and do not like to use condoms, so there's a high prevalence of HIV. Globally, women and girls bear the brunt of water acquisition, distribution, and related household tasks. Climate change is leading to more drought or more polluted water sources, and women and girls must walk further to access safe water. Water insecurity can trigger gender-based violence in the home, while walking to collection points and at collection points. For example, if there is insufficient water in the household, this can generate verbal disputes and violence. Violence could be directed towards children to enforce water collection roles. Women and girls may be physically abused if they don't provide sufficient water, or if they ask for help to collect the water, or if it takes too long for them to collect the water. Women and girls cannot easily change their water collection routines, and this makes it easy for men to target them with sexual harassment, physical assault, rape, or abduction through the water collection process. In addition, when the women and girls arrive at the collection points, the water collection points, there may be fights due to long queues, and they may be required to perform transactional sex. And when the water is collected, the women and girls must make the return journey, knowing that they have to go through the same thing tomorrow. So let us not forget the women environmental human rights defenders who face gender-based violence in defense of land, natural resources, and human rights. The IUCN report reported that between 2015 and 16 in Central America, there were 2,197 documented attacks against women defenders. Nearly a third were intimidated and were psychologically harassed. 21 women defenders were murdered, and another 44 were attempted murdered. Over half of the assailants were police, military personnel, public officials, or other government authorities. Now let's look at human trafficking and sexual exploitation. Today, 1 in 130 women and girls globally is living in modern slavery. This map shows that in countries where there is more slavery, shown in red, there is also more gender inequality, shown by bigger circles. Countries in Africa and Asia are most at risk for both gender inequality and slavery. Climate change can be a trigger for human trafficking, as demonstrated by Onima's story. She lives in Bangladesh, and she says, "We didn't have any wage-earning brother, so we sisters used to grow spinach and other vegetables to sell in the market, not far from the border with India. During storms and floods, it was impossible to grow crops, and so we used to live in complete poverty. There was a woman who would regularly come by to try and sell her goods, often striking up conversation with the family when she did. At the time, we were in crisis, and she said she could help. She claimed that as a domestic helper abroad, I could earn $80 a month, which was about 10 times what I'd been earning at the market. Given our situation, it was difficult to say no. After a few days, we rode a motorbike together to the border and then walked to the other side. We went to the train station where we were met by another man, and the woman left me. Eventually, we reached Mumbai, where I worked in a brothel. One day, the brothel owner took me and others in the brothel to the market to show me off. I ran away and found a police officer who rescued me, and now I'm back in Bangladesh and being supported by an NGO. When communities are destroyed and housing is in short supply, women can be very vulnerable. Adverts like this one appear after disasters. Is it from someone trying to help, or is it the first step on a human trafficking journey? How does female genital mutilation fit with climate change? This story describes that link. Margaret's 19 and comes from a Maasai community in southern Kenya that was dramatically hit by the drought. All of her father's cows died last year. You know, our family depends on cows, she said. There's no other option. Her father could no longer afford to pay for her schooling, so he pulled her out. Looking for a source of income, he and her grandfather prepared to have her circumcised, that's female genital mutilation, so that she could be married off for a dowry. They only get 5 cows, sugar, blankets, and then it is over. You are married off, said Margaret. Margaret escaped to a rescue centre that helps girls and young women in her situation. Female genital mutilation has been illegal in Kenya since 2011, but the law is not well enforced. And FGM is closely linked to our final form of violence, child marriage. Research confirms that girls who marry in childhood are at greater risk for intimate partner violence than girls of the same age who marry later. Save the Children's Global Girlhood Report shows how the impacts of climate disasters can increase the risk of child marriage in 4 ways. Firstly, when health and nutrition services are interrupted, girls' sexual and reproductive health needs are not met. This can increase unintended pregnancies and disability, both of which increase girls' risk of being married as children. Travelling to school may become dangerous, roads may be closed temporarily, or schools may become shelters. Girls are more likely than boys to be taken out of school for safety reasons and less likely to be supported to return after a period away from school. Being out of school increases a girl's risk for marriage. Climate events affect family income, and families under financial pressure may turn to child marriage to help reduce the cost of providing for one of their daughters. Climate disasters can disrupt the systems that help to keep girls safe from violence, like child protection services, law enforcement, schools, and informal protection from friends and family. Some families see child marriage as a way to protect their daughters from strangers. Hotspots where girls face the dual threat of high climate risk and high risk of child marriage are found in sub-Saharan Africa, especially around the Sahel region, and Asia. Globally, nearly 9 million girls face extreme risk of climate disasters and child marriage every year. Many girls in the hotspot countries are also struggling with the worst of the current hunger crisis. And this is what women and girls on the front line of child marriage are saying. Amina is a climate activist in Somalia. She says, "We are seeing and living the climate crisis. We've seen the drought ruin our farm. Now the sun is very hot. Everything is so dry and the trees are dying. You can't walk along the road because the dust is so bad. The dust is everywhere. Without climate change, I would have had a better life. That is something that really upsets me." In Mozambique, a young woman said, "I was pressured to get married when I was 15 years old because we were starving at home." Girls think that by getting married, their living conditions will improve, but not always. Everything depends on luck. In Kenya, a young woman said, "Due to climate change, parents are losing their only source of livelihood, which is livestock, and they are committing suicide. Children are left as orphans, and they may die due to hunger." UNICEF's report entitled "Is an End to Child Marriage Within Reach?" highlights that at the current pace, the world is at least 300 years away from ending child marriage. It also stated that for every 10% increase or decrease in rainfall, there is a 1% increase in child marriage. For example, Pakistan has made significant strides in reducing child marriage, halving the prevalence over the past 2 decades. the intense rainfall and flooding in 2022 would correlate to an 18% increase in the prevalence of child marriage, equivalent to erasing 5 years of progress. So we've described a few of the links between climate change and gender-based violence, but what do we do about it? Climate action is an essential component in the ongoing fight to eliminate violence against women and girls. This CSW 66 position paper from 2022 summarises the situation well and includes a poster outlining some recommendations that can be taken. And the recommendations are shown in this graphic. Number 1, public and private sectors work together to finance and implement evidence-driven laws. Number 2, develop evidence-driven prevention strategies. 3, provide affordable survivor-centred centres. 4, obtain flexible funding from states, private sector foundations and other donors to support autonomous, girl-led and women's rights organisations to end gendered violence. 5, increase access to funding for gender-just climate solutions, especially at the grassroots level. 6, include women and girls in decision-making, leadership roles, and environmental governance to support the creation of a green economy. 7, apply community-based cooperative models to build resilience, including equal land tenure security for men and women. And number 8, create an enabling environment by gathering gendered environment statistics. We can't improve it if we don't measure it. Many of these actions we are doing with Zonta Says Now and with our Zonta Says No programs. These are both flagship campaigns for Zonta International. And through these programs, you can learn to take personal action. By supporting the Zonta Foundation for Women, we can also continue to fund our international service programs around the world that help women and girls face the combined and interrelated challenges of climate change and gender-based violence. During the 16 days of activism, please use this presentation and the references in it to raise awareness of the links between climate change and violence against women. And together, let's build a better world for women and girls. Thank you.